And a very good evening to everybody. Welcome to this live stream performance. This is the next in our live stream series. This is our live stream number 98. I'm getting mixed up already. 98 on Saturday evening. It is 6 o'clock. We're hoping you can stay with us and join me. My name's Christopher Daigen, and as I say, this is our 98th live stream since we started last year. 2 a week, and we're still going strong. We've got an exciting program coming up, which I'll tell you about later on. But this evening's program, we hope you can join us for a selection of very beautiful music, lyrical, refined, some very passionate moments, but a lot of intricate detail, I think, in these works. Compositions I'm playing for you tonight by Mozart, by Liszt, Chopin, and Albéniz, the great Spanish composer. And apart from the fact that I'll be playing two pieces by each of these composers, I've also tried to compile the program in such a way that the pieces of one piece of music that I've chosen, which may be not so well known, I have coupled with a more well-known companion, you might say, by the same composer. So, for instance, I'm going to dive right in straight away and start off with the sonata by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart in C major, K545. Mozart, in his catalogue, wrote this as a sonata for beginners, sometimes known as a sonata simplice, or simple. It was written in the last years of his life, but it was intended as a student or a teaching piece of music. But it is very well known, and it's got such fine textures. It's very light, transparent sound, very brief, quite short. And one of the pieces of music, it's more than one of the pieces of the music in this evening's program that is often played by pianists of a very moderate ability, you might say, a sort of domestic environment music. The second piece of Mozart that I'd like to play is something a little bit more complicated from the sonata K333 in B flat major, and I'm going to play for you the second and third movements from this composition. I played the first movement some weeks ago. And this is really very refined, very positive, lyrical, such beautiful music from start to finish, especially in the very heartfelt and poignant, richly scored second movement, and then a charming melody which returns again and again and again in the last movement. Particularly interesting aspect of the last movement to listen out for is Mozart includes a little moment, cadenza moment, you might say, where he's using a style of what we might say concert music from greater concerts, from his piano concertos. Often in the first movement of a piano concerto, there would be a section towards the end of the movement where the orchestra stops and the pianist would play, actually in Mozart's time would improvise an idea, a little passage that would revisit some of the melodies and revisit some of the themes of the music that you've just heard, some brilliant scales and runs up and down the piano, and then ending off with a trill before the orchestra finishes with the final moments of the movement. Cadenza, meaning cadence, that final cadence is extended and held. And so in this piano sonata, you don't normally find such passages, but Mozart includes the influence of the style and has a little cadenza in a concert style. And so you'll hear that moment when the music comes to a halt and he revisits the opening theme, changes it very rapidly. There's a sequence of key changes and runs up and down the piano before he finishes the last movement. So you'll hear that in the last movement. And the other thing which is quite interesting about it is that this gives us an example of how Mozart's catalogue, the K numbers referring to Köchel, which are allocated to every one of Mozart's work, sometimes are under revision or sometimes under change. Now Barry is going to bring up an image, a beautiful portrait, trying to collect these portraits and show you them as many as I can. This is, in fact, Mozart in approximately the time when he was composing this. In 1778 or so, it is thought that the sonata was composed during this period. And then later revisions, later musicologists who study music or who study Mozart's composition said that actually that might not be the correct date. It might have been composed a few years earlier. And some people had put forward this idea on the grounds that they were analyzing Mozart's handwriting and said that the handwriting was similar to the music that he was composing earlier and not later. Also that the style of the music was written in the style of the music that was earlier and not later when people thought it was. But most importantly, and this is how many of these works are dated, is the paper, the actual paper and the style of paper that he was writing on was exactly the same as a style of paper that he was using in earlier compositions. The actual manuscript paper, if you had bought paper in Paris, it would have looked different, been made by a different manufacturer, as opposed to if you had bought the manuscript paper in Vienna or Linz, where it was thought that he had actually composed this piece. But this is up to debate and under discussion still, and even the most recent thought is that the actual date of 1778 is correct. So, without further ado, Mozart, the first movement of the sonata in C major K545, the beginner sonata, followed by the second and third movements of the sonata K333 in B flat major. Right, well, that was three movements from two different sonatas by Wolfgang Amadeus. We started off there with the first movement of the sonata in C major, K5 for 5, Sonata Facile, and then I played the second and third movements, the slow movement and the finale rondo from the Sonata K333 in B flat major. I hope you heard that cadenza section, such really uplifting and positive music there from Mozart. The dogs had a little moment, but I stopped worrying about them because I realized you actually don't hear as much as I do. Through the microphones, they don't pick up all the racket. And something was going on here behind me. Is something burning? No. I could hear something going crash, crash, crash. And I could hear Barry, is everything all right? You seem something went wrong.
I've got a message that the context, I think it's YouTube.
Oh dear. Are we not on YouTube again?
Well, I don't know, but they just said, are you playing tonight? I can't find it.
Oh dear, well, we'll find. We seem to have been having a few issues connecting to YouTube for some reason recently. Just a reminder that, well, if you are watching this, then you don't need to know, but of course it's always going to be available at our website. It seems to be the most reliable place to see it, although the easiest accessible is YouTube or Facebook. So I'm going to move on to music by Franz Liszt. I'm going to start off by playing a selection, a wonderful selection, a piece of music from his years of pilgrimage, the Italian years. I played one or two pieces from this selection before, where Liszt in his years of traveling was then very inspired by Italian art, sculpture, music, literature. And in this particular piece, he wrote a series of 3 songs for voice and piano, and that were based on the poetry of the Italian Renaissance poet Petrarch. And in this particular piece, then, the 3 pieces, he then rewrites or transcribes. He envisages or reinvents the pieces as solo piano music. And this is one of the pieces which I'm going to play for you now. It's the Petrarch Sonnet 104. And just to remind myself, the title of the sonnet, Peace is Not Found, Pace non trovo. Peace is not found. The poet says, I feel restrained and trapped, yet so free at the same time. I feel like ice, and yet I'm on fire all at once. And of course, he's talking about his experience and the feeling of being in love, for those of us who have experienced it at some point. Lucy, are you in love? Lucy's already barking. You wanted to come up for a little. As soon as I talk, Lucy wants to come up for a little hugsy. Hello, little Luce. What did you go and bark at? You went running outside to go and bark. Did Wendy Pop lead you astray? But I heard your voice barking the most. Oh, I was playing too much Mozart. The Mozart wasn't very good. I thought I did okay, Luce. That's Luce, you're going to have to mind your manners. You must have taught you something wrong at Switzerland finishing school. Okay, off you go. You're going to go lie with Friedi. You're going to go lie down there. So this is a very intense, passionate piece. This feeling of back and forth, hot and cold and restless, might be the right word, is very much expressed within the music. And to show you here, this is a photograph. I'm always discovering new things on the internet, a wonderful source of information. This is the earliest known photograph of Franz Liszt. Amazing to see a photograph, not a painting. I think it's from the 1940s and 1840s at least, and this is exactly the period where Liszt would have been composing these pieces. So this is, as I say, inspired by the Italian artistry, the Italian poetry of Petrarch. The sonnet 104, Peace is Not Found, in his transcription. And then in a similar vein, I thought, well, the other Lisztian piece, the other piece by Liszt, which undergoes a similar treatment, is his famous Liebestraum. He composed these 3 Liebestraum, songs of love or dreams of love, for voice and piano, and then at the same time arranged them for solo piano. And it's actually in the solo piano version that it is more well known. So 2 passionate pieces by Franz Liszt. by Franz Liszt, both of them, joined by the fact that he wrote them first as songs for voice, tenor or soprano, high voice, with piano accompaniment, and then rearranged them for solo piano pieces. The first, the Petrarch Sonnet 104 from the Année de Pèlerinage, the Years of Pilgrimage, Italy, the second volume, and the second piece, the very famous Dreams of Love, or Liebestraum, set to the poetry of Ferdinand Filigraut, I think is his name, and the words are "love as long as you can." That's the inspiration, the original words to that song, Liebestraum number 3. I'm going to move directly on to music of Isaac Albéniz, the Spanish Catalan composer. And I would like to play a really fascinating piece for you called Córdoba from a set of Spanish songs, Chant d'Espagne. What's quite unique about this piece of music is that he has a small poem in the beginning of the piece where he talks about the atmospheres of church bells, of the fragrant evening air, the hearing of distant popular songs. There seems to be a scene that he paints, the hymns from the church nearby, that melt together and blend in a very sort of a circulating atmosphere. And it's really a wonderful piece of music. It's like a little story in its own right. There's so many different colors and references, might be the right word, in this piece of music. What's interesting and what's unusual about Albéniz's music, especially in this situation, is that it's piano music, or music that's played on the piano, but not particularly piano music, as I see it. You look at a composer like Liszt or Chopin, and they really know how to exploit the music, the piano, to its fullest. Whereas with Albéniz, this music is written in a very pared down, a very elegant but very simple way. It's actually quite alarming to difficult to really nuance it, because everything is so fine. There's so few notes to deal with. And this is also why many of these pieces are actually better known in their guitar transcription versions. So after Córdoba, this very atmospheric piece of beautiful Spanish flamenco influences, as I say, bells, church hymns, I'm going to play another piece, Seville, from his Suite Española. And this suite consisted of, again, a number of different towns, each of a different atmosphere. This is a much more up-tempo piece, also very much more well-known in its guitar version. And the reason also that I'm playing these this evening is that, just to remind you that next week, I will be playing our 99th stream on Wednesday evening, which I think I'm going to still working on presenting quite a brilliant and exciting program for that. But then on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday next week, Friday night is our 100th stream. We have extra sessions because we'll be visited by James Grace from Cape Town. James will be playing a concert with myself, a duo concert on Friday night, a solo Spanish guitar program on Saturday night, and we'll be having a little informal conversation on Sunday. And so part of this session, or part of this program, I'm sure James will probably play at least one of these Albéniz pieces that I'm going to play for you now. You'll hear it in its guitar version, but we also plan to have some comparison and discussion around how these pieces work back and forth. So this is Albéniz, first of all, Córdoba, followed by Sevilla. That was two compositions by the Spanish, the Catalan-born composer Albéniz, from various regions of Spain. First of all, Córdoba, with its atmospheres, its recognition and imitation of church bells, of the Christian hymns, beautiful popular songs, flamenco rhythm guitars, all mingling in a beautiful atmosphere of evening air. And the second piece then from Seville, the Sevillanas, very energetic and exciting music. And as I said, you'll probably hear one of those pieces played in their guitar transcriptions. The piano version is what Albéniz wrote, but the guitar versions are often more well known than the piano versions. There's such incredible competition when you've got the likes of the genius piano writing of Liszt and Chopin, Debussy, Rachmaninoff, and Albéniz's music is absolutely wonderful, but it just doesn't, and certainly at this period that he's writing, have the same exploitation of the instrument. So I am going to move on to two compositions by Frédéric Chopin to end off this evening's program. I'm going to end off with the famous Polonaise in A major, not the very famous one in A flat, which is the grand heroic one, but sometimes known as the military Polonaise, and often actually not played in concert because it is a piece of relatively moderate difficulty. We seem to be harking on this issue of pieces of music that explore the piano to its fullest. So the A flat Polonaise, that's a piece of music that really is a great virtuoso showpiece. The military Polonaise is not so much, and it's a piece of music that many students, advanced students, might play, and subsequently you actually never hear it in the concert hall because concert pianists are always playing the great concert works. And on that note, it brings me to this interesting idea once again that in fact the live stream medium, which is so intimate with the microphone so close and such a upfront medium of musical interaction, these dramatic contrasts which you experience in the large concert hall don't really come across, and everything seems to be much more intimate and more refined. And I'm finding that so much more of the delicate music actually works very well in this situation. So in contrast to the military Polonaise, which is very well known, I'm going to play one of Chopin's most unique, delicate and ethereal pieces of music, which is not unknown, but it's certainly not something that one hears very often. And this is the Berceuse, Opus 57. Barry's going to bring up a picture, which is a very interesting drawing by his companion, Georges Sand, who made this pencil sketch at around that time when it was nearing the end of their relationship, and it was made at Nohant, her holiday house, where they spent many, many, many months and years together. And the idea behind this is actually a cradle song. Berceuse is a cradle song, a beautiful, gentle piece of music to lull a child to sleep. And Chopin has a real, as always, a stroke of genius. He has one opening left-hand figure, and he repeats that without fail from beginning to end of the piece. It's the same pattern repeated again and again. Only very much towards the end does he make one minor change to the chord, which is such a magical moment when suddenly that chord progression is changed for just 1 second, one fraction of a second, to bring us to the close of the piece. And in the right hand, he unfurls the most beautiful series of filigree work of detailed finger work, floating like icicles up and down the piano, really just gently lulling this gossamer idea into the child's head to send them off into a point of slumber. Of course, then the military Polonaise wakes everyone up after that. Very great rhythmic drive with drums and the trumpet calls in the middle. So this is Chopin's Berceuse, Opus 57, and the military Polonaise in A major, Opus 40, number 1. Polonaise in A major, the military Polonaise, not Chopin's title, but certainly it fits with those trumpet calls. Brought this evening's program to an end, preceded by the contrast, the absolute contrast, the beautiful Berceuse or Cradle Song, Opus 57, a piece that sits amongst the final works in Chopin's output, along with the Barcarolle, the Piano Sonata number 3 in B minor, as one of some of his most refined and quite perfect compositions. A piece of music that I have not played much. In fact, I think this might be the first time I've played it publicly, and it's very, very tricky, but a piece of music that I should play more. And I'm using the score. I've often played this military Polonaise by memory, but in working on it, I realized I'd completely reinvented my own piece. There was so many misreadings and so many chords and things that I did over the years, which I completely made up. I thought it's best that I try and get back to what Chopin wrote and have a good look and remind myself what's actually there. Also, during these pieces, it's apart from the live stream, which is very intimate and very up close, it brings this constant discussion. I was having a discussion about this on Facebook this week, about whether one should play Chopin's music with strength or whether one should reimagine oneself as this very delicate, consumption-riddled, delicate man coughing up blood occasionally on the keyboard, or whether actually his music speaks of something much bigger than that. And certainly in a piece like this, which expresses his Polish pride and his heritage and such incredible feeling, it demands that rigorous, muscular approach, you might say. In fact, when Chopin was teaching the other great Polonaise to a student and he broke a string because he was quite a strong pianist, Chopin replied that in fact, if he had this young man's strength, he would have broken him every string in the piano himself, playing with such force. Such was the actual intention or the hope that he wished to express in these Polonaises, in his love of his Polish people and his love of his Polish homeland and their desire to be free. So it's a very interesting balance that one always has to strike. That brings us to the end of this evening's concert. We've run a little bit over time. Thanks to Barry at the controls for, I hope, a lovely session. I hope we have gone out on YouTube. If not, then you'll always find our productions at Vimeo and at my website. Thanks for the girls for behaving most of the time. I see they're having a nice little relaxed session here. Perhaps Barry can get a picture of them just before we go. They seem quite chilled out. And of course, if you are able to support us, please do. We are incurring annual fees coming up for our platform, our Vimeo platform, as well as extra costs of bringing in guest artists and the ongoing cost of these. We are determined to keep it free. So if you are able to support us, please do. You'll find the QR codes on the screen in a second, maybe after you've just seen the dogs. See, there they are. There's little Lucy, the long-haired Dachshund. Hello, little Luce. And there's Wendy Pop in the middle. Lucy now can hear me looking at her, see me looking at her. And there's Frida fast asleep on the other side. You must go back in your basket. In your basket, Luce with the waggy tail. Anyway, thanks so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. And we look forward to seeing you. We look forward to seeing you on Wednesday. Are you excited when James comes? James coming to stay for a few days, Luce? Are you excited? Yes, there's an extra pair of hands to tickle your chest. Yes, I know that. Oh, you should like tickling, big tickling, tickling. Have a good evening, stay well, and look after yourself.